Hello. Today we're going to talk about the relationship of suppliers to customers and the value that that relationship holds in the overall quality process. One of the things TQM companies are really good at doing is developing a very robust supplier network that lets them do things that many of their competitors are unable to do. Now, and supply chain is a very critical part of pretty much every business. Supply chains are long for almost for everybody. They tend to be multinational. Certainly, when I had my cell phone repair business, all the parts that I bought, even if I bought it from a local distributor, they all originated on the other side of the world. Vast majority of them in China. They'd passed through numerous hands before they ever got to me, and that's not an unusual circumstances. So supply chains are usually really fairly long. There's a lot of interconnectivity. We're certainly seeing both the plus and the downside of it during the pandemic, in that we're seeing issues in one part of the world have very significant supply chain disruptions, in other parts of the world, which is one of the challenges with streamlined stock supply chains, that you potentially have issues with stockouts, and we're starting to see that in some places with some kinds of things. Certainly, PPE has certainly been one of those that we've seen significant increase in demand for it, and as a result, it's outstripped the supply, and you have some fairly significant issues. All companies need to cultivate a relationship between themselves and their suppliers. As a customer, poor quality cost me, and it cost me in all kinds of ways. So it cost me with end user dissatisfaction. So if I bought parts and some of them were bad and we used them to try to do repair, and it doesn't work properly, or we have to redo it a second time, I have end user dissatisfaction as a result of that. I potentially have warranty costs. There may be more downtime. Often what happens is you'll keep more inventory than you would normally to help, manage defects or manage vagaries in the supply chain. And as a result, you tie up more money, and you end up in a position where you risk greater obsolescence with that inventory. Generally speaking, in business, you want as little inventory as you can get away with, because for the most part, it's money in another form, and it will almost always be worth less money than what you paid for it. So what you want to do is do as little of that as you possibly can get away with. However, there are times when you have to hedge against it, and you may end up holding more inventory. For suppliers to change between customers and back and forth, if all you do is sell a thing or widgets, and it's the same thing you could get from multiple different places, it isn't necessarily an expensive thing to switch suppliers. But for those that really leverage that relationship, you usually you get so much more than just stuff from wherever it is that you're doing business with. And to change that relationship to somebody else can be incredibly disruptive and take a tremendous period of time. Suppliers want more of your business. In fact, that's one of the base business strategies that you have, is that when you get a customer, particularly a business customer, you want to continue to do things so that you're able to enlarge the share of business that you have with them. And you do that by offering other services. You do that by doing as good a job as you can, so that you're easy to do more business with. If I become a supplier for Ford, and I'm delivering automotive glass to them, and I do a good job of it, maybe I was only supplying for the F-150, but when they're looking to retool for another model, I'm easy to do business with because we already have an existing relationship. I have a track record with them. There's predictability that comes from that. There's all kinds of advantages. So an enlarged relationship between customers and suppliers has benefits on both sides of the equation. Now, historically, purchasing was often very transactionally focused. I was looking for something in particular. I would go to a variety of places that potentially could fulfill it. I would give them specifications, and I would basically pick who could deliver, price and availability, largely, right? So who has it and how much. And an awful lot of traditional purchasing is done that way. Now, there's some categories in some areas where that still makes sense. But one of the huge opportunities that the Japanese seized on, to the detriment of North Americans, was the role that your suppliers could play in your success, and basically allowing you to do things that you couldn't do on your own. So traditional purchase, as I said, is price and availability. It's very transactional, so it's a very short-term kind of focus. There's little thought given to changing suppliers or anything else. It's all very transactionally focused. But as a result, you actually lose out on a lot of potential, because um, suppliers are so much more than just that stuff. They can be expertise, they can be financing, they can be logistical help, they can be all kinds of things that really make a meaningful impact to your business. Now, this really became apparent in the auto industry in North America, specifically in the U.S. In the 1970s. So I've alluded to this period of time before, because this was really a watershed change in Western businesses, and particularly in America. As the Japanese started to come on, right, and as I said, they were right place, right time. Oil crisis in the early 70s prompted a tremendous interest in smaller, more fuel efficient vehicles, or at least for some length of time it did. Um, their offerings did so much better on so many aspects than the North American ones did, and it started the slide to the point where in most places in Canada, the U.S., if you go to any sizable parking lot, you'll count far more non big three. In other words, General Motors, Ford, or Chrysler, more non three vehicles than big three. And in the 70s, everything was one of the brands from the big three. Everything else was a very much a fringe or a niche offering. One of the reasons that the Japanese have been so successful is that they had been able to resolve a lot of the quality problems that unfortunately were inherent in vehicle production. And this is back at a time when there really isn't any computerization or things like that in the vehicles. They're all mechanical systems. Engines operate based on spark plugs and rotors, and a lot of concepts that date back to the beginnings of the technologies. And although they've improved upon them, obviously, over the years, this is still pre-electronics, really, right? The most electronics you get is the transistor, in the radio sets and things like that. There isn't really an awful lot more than that. And electronic ignition and stuff like that really doesn't start to come in until we get into the 1980s and beyond. But even at this period of time, putting together a car is not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of separate systems that have to work together. They have to work in environments that are very different. They can be very challenging. There are potential reliability and durability issues. It's not an easy thing to do. So it's not really that unusual that the experience when you bought a car was that you would keep a notebook, or at least we used to keep a notebook in it for the first couple of weeks and write down all the things that didn't work properly, because there always would be, right? So this window doesn't roll up correctly, and these are roll up windows, by the way. This is before widespread use of power windows. And this wouldn't work, and this would rattle, and this didn't fit properly, and all kinds of things. And then you take it back to the dealer, and they'd fix all of these things, and you just have to keep on top of it. This was the experience, right? This just was what it was. And people that bought these Japanese cars did not have that experience. And one of the reasons why they had been so successful is that the Japanese had picked their supply partners carefully, and they had picked them for more than just what they got from them. So one of the things that was more common with them was to go to a supplier. So let's say I'm I'm speccing a new vehicle, and I need components for the braking system. Well, you yourself can design the braking system and do everything yourself, and then basically put specs out for, this is what I want you to make, and it looks like this, and everything else. Okay. Or you can leverage your supply relationships and the companies whose business is making brake systems for you, for other people, for other kinds of vehicles, for all kinds of other things that are going to have very, very deep technical knowledge and experience in that space. Why not leverage their capabilities to help you do a better job with your design and to help you do a better job in delivering the parts to you? That same strategy and that same rationale goes even further, right? So one of the important things that need to happen in manufacturing environments is before you introduce assemblies or components into the environment to use them, you want to make sure that they work, right? So you're going to inspect, because if you make something with a bad part, you've invested a bunch of time and money into something already. What you want to do is, if there's an issue, you want to sort the thing out before you ever put it into production, not when it's already partway through. So incoming inspection is an important part of it. Well, one of the things that was another part of the larger relationship is that you would push incoming inspection down to your supplier. You would have them do it before they ever shipped it to you, which conceptually makes a whole bunch more sense, because what sense does it make to ship something to you that's potentially no good? If somebody's going to inspect it, why don't you inspect it earlier in the process instead of later? And then you make sure that they're doing the right things for the inspections by auditing their process. Same as you would internally audit whoever was doing your incoming inspections. So it's just a couple of examples of kind of the more than just the stuff kind of thing that you get from suppliers. And it really has a lot to do with changing your process and your focus. So I'd said earlier that a lot of this stuff to some degree can be boiled down to longer term focus versus short term focus. And one of them is in this space. So instead of looking at transaction to transaction to transaction, I'm looking at developing a relationship with key partners that give us the ability to do things in a particular area. And I'll lean on them for expertise and design help and all kinds of other things. And they'll help us be successful with the things that we're doing. So you start looking at the value of the relationship overall, not just a single order, not just for a single line or things like that. It also involves broadening the way that you evaluate your suppliers. So it's not just about price and availability. It now is about all kinds of other aspects of things. And this is often referred to as a TCO, or a total cost of ownership way of approaching things, where you look at all the things that are involved in the acquisition or use or relationship or all of those other pieces from start to finish. And it's a much more complete way of looking at what your costs actually look like. So the actual product cost itself is a piece of that, right? But if I get different logistical support from them, if I get different, financing support from them, if I get incoming inspections done by them already, if I get, like, all of these things have value. And what you're trying to do is balance all of those things off in a more holistic view versus just focusing on price alone. And many transactions make more sense to look at it as from a TCO standpoint than strictly from a purchase price of the item itself. If you buy a vehicle, right, there's the cost of the vehicle itself, but that's not all there is to it, right? There's the acquisition cost. Very few people pay cash because they don't have it, right? So they finance it. There's financing charges. That's another part of your costs. There's licensing. There's insurance. There's maintenance. Depending on where and how you use it, there may be parking costs. There's all of these things put together. And then the end of the useful life of that car, if you sell it, right, then presumably you get something back from it. What you want to do is look at all of those things together, and that gives you a sense of your total cost of ownership. And it really makes a lot of sense particularly when you're looking at multiple different choices. You want to look at what's the TCO impact of each of the choices in its entirety, right? And then choose the path that makes the most sense for the circumstance that you're in. So there's a couple of strategies here. They're both the Duran and the Goldford look very similar. basically what this talks about is kind of the relative value of the acquisition to the organization. And it has a lot to do with how you would approach it. So for example, in the Q1, the low criticality, low expenditure. So this is office supplies, some food services, things like that. They're not mission critical to your business, right? They are, yes, they're things that I need, but they're not mission critical to what I do. In those cases, transactional purchase relationships often still make a lot of sense, because the truth is, you don't want to invest more in something than you're likely to get back out of it. And investing in a bigger, broader, more encompassing relationship is an investment. You want to make sure you only do that in areas where it's going to make sense for you. So for the low criticality, low expenditure stuff, you don't usually do it. Now, most organizations have rules around these categories to try to prevent poor decision making, right? So they may vet suppliers so that you can only buy from certain suppliers and things like that. So they may put some structure around it. But there's not a lot of investment made in the relationship because there's not an awful lot that you're going to get back out of it. Above that, if you look at the high criticality, low expenditure, what they've got is the Q3 here. So that's things like especially contract labor, or it's got highly engineered equipment. So, if I'm replacing some production equipment and we only replace it every 10 years or things like that, it's a little more important, right? It's more important to your business, but relatively speaking, the expenditure is lower, right? I'm going to buy this thing and it's going to work for the next 10 years sort of thing. I may make a little more of an investment in the relationship there, but probably not a ton, because again, it's an area where I'm challenged for how much value I can get back out of that. Now, some things like the specialized contract labor, if you're using this resource fairly frequently, so I fairly frequently have to go and pick up various skills for a project, and then it goes on to something else, and the entity that I'm getting this through then can make a difference. So at BlackBerry, we did a lot with contract labor. We did a lot with contract labor largely because of the financial budgeting process. It's quite common in organizations where areas will have money to spend as an expenditure, but they won't be allowed to hire full-time employees. So what you do is you use your money that you can spend and you hire contract employees. And there's usually rules around what you can do and how you can do it. One of the things at RIM is you couldn't have a contract employee for more than 2 years. At the end of the 2 years, you had to hire them or fire them. But during that 2 years, we were able to make use of, and in fact, in a lot of areas of business, used pretty extensively contract labor as a means to extend the workforce and allow us to do things that we needed to do. The companies that we used to source those people, we had ongoing relationships with, because it was an ongoing piece of what we did. In Q2, the low criticality, high expenditure, this is actually a quadrant where you don't want anything, because this is the waste quadrant. So non-standardization of purchase, excess inventory, things as a result of insufficient planning, which again is usually waste. This is a category that could be quite high expenditure, but it doesn't have a positive impact on your business. So you actually don't want anything in that category, let alone be investing in purchase relationships for it. Where you really want to make those big investments is in Q4, high criticality, high expenditure, or the things that are mission critical to your business, right? If I operate a restaurant, the people that I get the produce and the meats and the things like that from, that I use to create the dishes that I serve to my customers, that's mission critical. The quality, the timeliness, the availability, all of those things of that from those suppliers will define what I'm able to do with my customers. If I don't have high quality suppliers, it will be virtually impossible for me to deliver a high quality dining experience to my customers. Just because I have good suppliers doesn't necessarily mean that it's a cakewalk to do a good experience. But they'll very much be able to define on how much I can do from there. That's absolutely mission critical. That's totally a area where you make the relationship investments, because that's a high criticality to you, and lean on those suppliers and those sources for recipes and potential logistical things, right? In restaurants, certainly A lot of food is, a lot of the best stuff is done fresh, which means that it's coming frequently, tends to be coming in smaller lots. So the role logistics plays in those kinds of scenarios, it can be fairly significant. Um, I mentioned before, so the Goldfarb one, they're different words, but it's a similar kind of approach in that non-critical components don't waste a lot of time and attention in the relationships for them. It is very much still a price and availability thing. When you look at leveraged or strategic, a little more investment in leveraged, absolutely, you want to make the big investments in strategic components. Bottlenecks are what you want to avoid. So you want to, one of the things that I mentioned before is one of the roles that most purchasing organizations have is not only of being responsible for the relationships for the strategic and the mission critical stuff, but it's putting parameters around non-critical purchases so that you don't have them become bottlenecks, right? So that's the, having approved supplier lists, having criteria that limits how different people within the business can spend the money. And those are all done under the guise of trying to prevent things becoming bottleneck components. Um, and then just lastly, if we look at this overview, it's just, we'll highlight it. This is actually, if you look at the Duran trilogy and how it kind of overlays this whole part. And when we talked kind of earlier about what different things you do in those different phases, right? So in your quality planning, it's all about your sourcing strategy, customer needs analysis, your business planning, how all that stuff fits into the overall strategy of the organization. And then as you're actually actualizing that stuff, that's your quality control, right? So your actual supplier selection process that you go through. The data analysis and feedback, which I talked about before, is you got to be able to, as you're starting down this road, you need to know what success looks like, and you need to know how you're going to measure for success, right? How do I know when I'm getting there? How do I know if I'm making progress? And then your qualifications and inspections and all that other stuff, again, are part of that overall control process. And then your continual improvement is basically looking at your processes and your cycle times and your outputs and all those other things. And you're always looking at, how do I do it better tomorrow than I did it today? And the better is less expensive, fewer defects, more cost effective, quicker, like all of these various different variations on that same theme.